In this tutorial, we're going to go over how to set up and use the reservation system. First, I've logged in as the administrator, and what we're going to do first is we're going to go to the amenities feature. That's because the reservation system really is comprised of two parts. The first is the amenities, and you may have set up the amenities on your website to give members a view of all the different amenities in your community and their hours, who to contact, what the rules are, and so forth. But they can also be used for the reservation system if you have the mega plan. The reservation system is only available in our mega plan currently. So once you've set up amenities, let's go in and take a look at how they can be configured to work with the reservation system. Again, if you want to use reservations, you must set up your amenities to be configured for reservations first. Otherwise, they won't appear in the reservation system. So I'm going to click on amenities, and you can see we've got one amenity set up, the clubhouse, in our sample community. And so I'm going to go into its manage page here, and I'm going to edit the clubhouse so I can look at its properties. This is the normal information you would see when you set up an amenity, just for the normal amenities page. But we're going to scroll down, and there's a checkbox here that normally is not checked that says allow reservations to be made for this amenity. If we check that box, a whole set of new options are available specific to how this amenity can be used for making reservations. So the first thing is the reservations instructions. And this is a typical editor box that you can edit some free-form text. And this information will appear on the reservation form. So when somebody goes into the clubhouse reservation page to reserve the clubhouse, they're going to be presented with a form to fill in about this reservation they're trying to make. And this set of instructions that appears here, whatever you enter here, will appear at the top of that form. So you can enter specific information saying, when you reserve the clubhouse, you must confirm 3 days in advance, you must fill out the following form, whatever you need. But this is specific instructions about reserving this amenity that will appear on the form when the user goes to reserve it. All right, let's go over some of these options down here. Default calendar event category for new reservations. Okay, when you create a new reservation, it's possible to add that reservation to the website calendar. Now, I should explain here, there are actually two calendars in the website. There's the calendar you're familiar with, which is up in here where we go to community calendar, and you see the normal calendar comes up and you can have events, and you've probably used that. There's also the reservations calendar, which is specific to creating reservations, and it's only going to show reservations, and it's only going to show reservations for that amenity that you're looking at the time. So for example, when I go into the reservations app later, you'll see we'll choose an amenity like the clubhouse, and then you'll see a calendar for the clubhouse. And that calendar looks a lot different than the system calendar that you're used to, the website calendar that you're used to seeing. The website calendar is just day by day, like a typical calendar grid of, one box per day with the different events listed. The reservations calendar is an hour by hour within each day, because you can make reservations on an hourly or actually a half hourly basis. So you'll see time slots listed. You don't see that with the regular calendar. So if you want, there is the ability to have a new reservation added to the regular website calendar as well when it's made. And then this selection allows you to choose which category those new reservations should go in. So in this case, there actually is a calendar category called Clubhouse for Clubhouse events. So we could add reservations for the Clubhouse to the regular calendar as well as the reservation calendar. So again, this is specific to the website calendar, the one you're probably familiar with. If you haven't used reservations yet, you've probably used the calendar feature, but that's separate from the reservation calendar. This checkbox goes with this first option, default add reservation to calendar enabled. Okay, what that means is if I'm a person going in to make a reservation, and let's say this, I want to add this to the calendar, to the regular calendar. So I'm going to add a meeting at the clubhouse. And so when I go into the form to create my reservation, I can, as the administrator, I can set it up so that when the user goes in to make a reservation for the clubhouse, there's a checkbox at the bottom of that form that says, add this reservation to the calendar. And normally it's not checked. So if you kind of feel like people will forget to check the box and you'd like them to add things to the calendar, to the regular system calendar, when they make a reservation, you can just check this box. And what'll happen is when they go in to make a reservation on that form, the box to add this reservation to the system calendar, that box will be checked by default. So you're just checking that box by default for them so that they don't, they won't forget to check it. If you would like them to have, if you would like them to be adding these events to the regular calendar, then you can check this box and that will kind of make it the default. They could still uncheck it, but it will make it the default. That is not the common usage, so this will be unchecked when you first create your amenity. In most cases, your reservations will only be listed on the reservations calendar. Maximum active reservations for this amenity per member. That's going to allow you as the administrator to limit the number of active reservations a single member can make for this amenity. What's an active reservation? Well, an active reservation is one that hasn't occurred yet. So if I reserve this for, let's say, 2 weeks from now, well, a month from now, that's no longer an active reservation. It's already occurred. Assuming the end date of the reservation has passed. A reservation can be for more than one date. So if I reserve the clubhouse for a week, next month, let's say, well, 6 months from now, the end date, which was only that 1 week, that's well past. So that's no longer an active reservation. But if a person has reserved the clubhouse for next week, and they come in again and they want to make another reservation for the clubhouse, it's going to look at this and say, okay, you have one outstanding reservation that hasn't actually occurred yet. And let's say this field was set to 1. It's not going to let them make another reservation for this amenity at this time. It's going to wait until that other reservation has completely expired. The full week, let's say, has passed if that reservation was for a week. So this lets you limit the number of open reservations that haven't occurred yet, or haven't completed yet, I should say. They may have started, but they haven't completed yet. Maximum RSVPs for this amenity per member per day, week, month. Okay, RSVPs work kind of similar to the calendar. If you haven't seen them before, what it means is normally in the reservation system, a normal member will come in and say, I want to reserve the clubhouse for this afternoon at 4 o'clock or next week on Monday at 4 o'clock. And they'll create a reservation. There's another way to do this as well, which is, let's say you wanted to hold a holiday party in the ballroom at the clubhouse. You as the administrator could go into the reservation system and create a reservation for the clubhouse ballroom for that one evening, let's say from 8 p.m. till midnight. Then you can also opt, when you set up the reservation, which is going to come later, to allow RSVPs for that reservation, which is very similar to RSVPs for a calendar event, which you may have used on the regular system calendar so far. And all that does is it allows members to say whether or not they're going to attend that event. In this case, they're attending a reservation, which essentially is an event that's been reserved. So this way you could reserve the amenity, like the clubhouse, for a particular event, and then allow members to RSVP and say who's going to come. So this option, if you do that, this option says the maximum number of RSVPs that this member can have per day, week, or month. The day, week, month part wouldn't be necessarily applicable to a single evening event. So this is not a common usage, so you don't really have to worry about it if it sounds complicated. This was actually started during the pandemic when amenities were being the administrators were setting up time slots within amenities for people to attend them. Like a gym was a common one for this. They didn't want to have too many people in the gym at one time. So what they would do is they would create pre-existing reservations, and they would make it, time slots, the 1 o'clock hour, the 2 o'clock hour, the 3 o'clock hour, and so forth. And they would allow people to RSVP to any one of those time slots to use the gym. And this way they would put limitations on it so that they didn't have 20 people in the gym at one time. They could keep it at 3 or 4 or 5. So they were using this. So that they were using this particular option not to limit how many people could go to the gym at one time. They were using it so that a single member didn't go in and RSVP to every single time slot on every single day. So yeah, again, this is a very uncommon usage, but it's good to know that it's there in case you have one of these uncommon cases where you need it. This is a little more common usage, this next one. Allow reservations to be made up to X number of days in advance. You may want to restrict if you're going to have an amenity for reservations. You may not want somebody to reserve the clubhouse, a year in advance. You may want to say you can only reserve it a month in advance. So this just allows you to put in how many days in advance you can make the reservation. So if a person goes in, if this says 30 days in advance and they go in to make the reservation, they select a time slot that is a day 6 months from now, it's simply going to say you can't make that reservation. Email address for notifications. This is kind of like every other application that has a notification email address. This is the email address you want to use. So when people make reservations, you as the webmaster, or if you have somebody who's in charge of this particular amenity, maybe there is a clubhouse manager and you want that person to be notified, that's the email address you would use in here. So it lets them know that a reservation's been made. And they can go in and then review it, approve it, as they see fit. But this is just going to send an email notification to whoever you put in here. After completing reservation, display one of these options. Normally, when a person makes a reservation, it will just display a default message saying, thank you for your reservation, it's been submitted, it will be approved, you'll be notified. It's basically a default message saying it's pending, but it will be, you'll be contacted. There are 3 other options. A custom form. If you are using the forms application, the online custom form application, again, is only in the mega plan, but you'll have that. If you have reservations, you have the form application, you have the form app. You can set up a custom form, which might be used, for example, when a person makes a reservation, you need additional information from them. Maybe it's even a form where they are signing like a waiver of liability. So you could create that form in the form application, and then what will happen is after they make the reservation, it will forward them automatically to that form where they can fill it in and submit it. It's important to note, this option simply forwards them to that form. It doesn't force them to fill it in. They could close their browser at that point and never complete it. So there is an element of human interaction here on the part of an administrator or a manager. That's if you are using a form and they need to fill out the form in order to complete their reservation, they will have completed their reservation already. It will be in the system. It may not be approved yet, but as a human, you would have to go in and say, okay, I've got a reservation here. It's pending. Do I have the associated form from that person? And if you have both, then okay, I'll go in and I'll approve this reservation. Again, not a common usage, but it is used, and we do get questions about it. So this is something good to know. It's there if you have kind of a 2-part process, not only making the reservation, but also filling in this additional information that's needed for the reservation. And this is the way to do it, using a custom form. And again, keep in mind, they don't have to submit the form. They can close their browser or just never hit the submit button. So be aware that there's no way to force them to do that. But the reservation will be made. The reservation will appear in the reservation calendar as completed. You just need to know that there is a form for this. Okay, the next one is custom page. Let's say you don't like the default message and you want to say something else, or you want to maybe give them a page that has additional information about the clubhouse and some additional rules they need to follow. Yes, you could put that in the instructions field up here, but you might want to have a whole page dedicated to that. What you could do is go into File Manager and create a custom web page. And then if you select a custom page in here, it will let you choose the custom page from File Manager that you want to send them to. And I should say also, when you select form from here, it also lists the form, so you can choose which form you want to forward them to. That's how this works. So that's the form and the page option. If you select custom URL, that would be if you want to go to most likely a page somewhere on a different website. I don't know how that would be used necessarily as an example, but you may want to send them someplace else off-site. This could be a URL for a page on your site that isn't in File Manager. I'm not sure what a good example of that would be. But if you couldn't use the custom page, because this is only going to show file manager pages, and you wanted to go to some other page on the website, you could do that through custom URL. This can be on this website or external. Okay, reserve this amenity for full days only. That's going to affect how the reservation form appears. Normally, when it comes up, the calendar in the reservation system, that is, normally when you say I want to reserve the clubhouse, it's going to come up with a calendar that has both days and time slots. So you can choose from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Wednesday. You might want to say this amenity can only be reserved for full days. In that case, the calendar that appears on the reservation in the reservation app when you select the clubhouse would only show single slots. It would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for each day of the month. There are no time slots displayed because you're either choosing it for the full day or not. So if you check this box, it will only allow full day reservations. Allow repeating reservations. This is, you as the administrator can say, I don't want people to reserve the clubhouse from Monday through Friday. I don't want them to have that option. I only want them to be able to choose, or even for that matter, from 3 o'clock till 9 o'clock. You can say, I just want to allow, actually, let me go back. That's okay. Allow repeating reservations allows you to say that you only want to allow this amenity to be reserved for one starting date. Normally, you can set up a starting date and ending date. So you can say, I'm going to have this occur weekly on Sunday from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock from January 1st to June 1st. And if you don't want people to do that, if you don't want your members to reserve it, over a long period of time, you can check this box. And what it will do is it will get rid of the ending date field when they make a reservation. So they'll only have a starting date, which means they can basically only reserve it for that one date and then pick the time slots. So this is used to limit repeating reservations. As we scroll down, you can see this time slot box here. And if I click on this little arrow, it will expand it and show you days of the week and hours. What this lets you do is if you check a box, it means that the amenity is available for reservations on dates and times that the boxes are checked. These red boxes that are unchecked mean this amenity is not available. So it's not available on any day of the week at 12 a.m., 12 midnight, really up through 7:30. In other words, this amenity opens at 8 a.m. every day, and it is available until 8 p.m. for reservations every day. It is not available after that. If you wanted to get rid of it on weekends, you could uncheck all of the Saturday boxes and all of the Sunday boxes, and that would only be available Monday through Friday from 8 to 8. This little icon here just lets you select all of the days for this row. So if you wanted to check all of the days for this particular time slot, you could check it and then you can toggle it. You can clear it on and off. If you want to start with them all clear or all selected, whichever one is going to result in the least amount of work for you to go in and check boxes, you can select all or clear all at the bottom here, and that will default the whole grid to off or on. Excluded dates allows you to add certain dates that you want to exclude automatically. So for example, if I wanted to exclude Christmas, I could put in 12/25, 2023, and that will exclude this year's Christmas. Now, let's say, for example, you want to exclude every Christmas. You want to exclude this date every single year. The little trick is you can put in 9999 as the year, and that will be interpreted as every single year. And in case you forget that, there's a little help button here. And if we click on that, it will show you up here that specifying a date of 9999 in the year will exclude that date for any year, for that date in any year. And that is it for the reservation portion of amenities. Down here, the photo is part of the standard setup for amenities. But these are all the fields that are used for setting up this particular amenity in the reservation system. So now we're going to go over to the reservations app. Now the reservations app has, I'm going to go through a couple different screens here. The first one I'm going to go into is the administration screen where we set up options. And these are global options for all reservations. So we have the instructions, of course, like almost every other app. And these instructions are different than the previous ones you saw on the amenity because they're not specific to an amenity. These are the reservations that appear when you first go into the reservations app and you haven't even chosen an amenity yet that you want to reserve, see, this will appear right here. This is the text we just saw. So let me go back in there. And as we scroll down, the email address for notifications allows you to set up essentially a fallback address for notifications. Normally, the email address you saw as set up in the amenity is the one that will be used to notify for reservations for that amenity. However, if there is no specific address set up in that amenity, then it falls back to this email address for notifications for any amenity that does not have an email address specific to the amenity. Always send from. This is an email address that those notifications will come from. So you may want to have a separate email address than webmaster, which is the default. It will normally default as coming from webmaster at your website address. You may want it to come from something like reservations at your website address. But if you do that, you should set up a forwarder in Mail Manager for that address. Otherwise, people could reply to it and you'd never get them. The custom image for the main page. This is similar to most other apps. There's a small iconish size image you can put up in the corner of the page when they go to the main page for this app. The background color for active reserved time slots. This is for reservations that have been made and approved and are truly holding that spot. So you can pick a color that you'd like to use for those reservations on that time slot grid, that calendar, which we're going to see in a minute. Pending reservations are ones that have been submitted by members but haven't been approved yet by the webmaster. And these you can set up with a different color. You might do something with a little bit of a yellow background to show they're pending. And the background color for past time slots are time slots that have already occurred. You can't make a reservation. They're essentially not enabled for reservations. The system will not allow them to click on them. So by default, we have a grayish background for those slots. And you'll see these in action in a minute. These are all the options you can use for the global reservations app, not specific to any amenity. Automatically approve submitted reservation requests. I think normally most places will have this as not turned on because they want to be able to review reservation requests to make sure it's a legitimate use of the facility, or that make sure they haven't gone outside the bounds of the rules of the community. So this box you'd normally leave unchecked, but if you want to, you can check it. And all that's going to say is normally a reservation will be in a pending state until approved by someone, an administrator. You can bypass that and just allow it to go straight to being an active reservation. As soon as the person submits it, it is holding that time slot. It's up to you how you want to use that, but that option is available to go either way. Allow only reservation administrators to make reservations. This is a much less common used one, but if you aren't allowing residents to actually reserve amenities, you somehow always have them submit some type of form to you, whether it's on paper or electronically or through email or through the forms application here. You always have them submit their requests to a specific person, let's say. That person reviews it and they make the reservation in the reservation calendar, and they're an administrator. And they're basically using the reservation calendar and the reservation app for their own purposes. The members may have access to the calendar to see which slots are available and which things have been reserved, but they can't actually make the reservations. So again, that's not necessarily a common usage. It has been done. It's why the option's there. If you'd like your community to work that way, where other people can't make reservations, but they can just submit them essentially to request, and then they don't get entered into the calendar at all, even pending, until the admin actually makes the reservation for them, then you can use that option. Hide option to accept conflicts for non-admin members. Okay, normally what's going to happen is when a member goes to make a reservation, there's going to be an option on the screen, on the form, a checkbox that says accept conflicts. And what that means is if that person's making a reservation that's going to occur weekly on Mondays at a certain time, it may turn out that a different reservation is using one of those Mondays at the same time, but not all of them, just one of them. So they have a conflict. If the box is not checked to accept conflicts, then what will happen is the system will go out and check. It'll look at all the future dates you're going for, and it'll say, sorry, one of these dates is not available, so you can't complete this reservation. And it will not complete the reservation at all. None of the dates will be reserved. If they then go back and check the box to accept conflicts and submit it again, it will go ahead and reserve all the open dates that aren't in conflict, and it will skip over the one that somebody else has already reserved. It won't overwrite their reservation. It'll just let them have the ones that you can have based on availability. So you can hide that option to accept conflicts, and that would basically force the member to only be able to reserve amenities when they can get all of their reservation dates. All of them are available. If there are any conflicts, it wouldn't allow them to bypass it and accept the other dates. Hide option to create calendar events for non-admin members. There's an option on that form when they reserve the amenity to create a calendar event. And this is a regular system calendar event that I talked about before, not the reservation calendar. You can take away that option for them to create the calendar event. So if you don't want the regular calendar to be cluttered up with reservations, if you want to keep the two separate, you don't want people to be able to check that box. So you could check this box and it takes away that option. The next one is hide reservation contact information for non-admin members. Normally when a person makes a reservation, they're going to have fields for contact information. So if they're reserving the clubhouse for a party, and let's say there's a specific person in charge of this party, it's not them, but there's a specific person, they're going to be able to fill in the contact information for that person on the reservation. So anybody looking at the reservation on the calendar, once it's there, will know who to contact if they have a question about the event or about the reservation. You can hide the contact information from non-admin members. So if you don't want other residents to see that information, for example, the person making the reservation says, I'm going to give you my phone number, my address, and my name for this reservation. You're the administrator. I'm putting this information on the form. You can contact me if there's a problem. But I don't want everybody in the community to know my phone number or my email address or whatever else I'm filling in. It's fine if they know I'm reserving it. They just don't need to see my contact information. This allows you to do that. It allows you to give some privacy for things like phone numbers and emails to the reservation contact information, so only administrators can see them. Hide event repeat selection for non-admin members. When a person makes a reservation, it's kind of like what we talked about before on the amenity page. That one was specific to each amenity, but you can simply say, I want to hide the event repeat selection for all reservations, no matter what the amenity is. So when people reserve any amenity, they can only do it for one time. They can't say a starting date of January 1st and an ending date of June 1st. They can only make it for one date at a time. They could make multiple reservations up to the extent that you allow them, but they can't make one reservation that spans months. Expand the mobile day listing by default to show all time slots. There's a separate formatted listing when you're on a mobile device and you're looking at the reservation calendar, because the normal calendar is so wide, which you'll see in a little bit. It's showing each day vertically and then all the time slots going from left to right. It's a very large grid. On a mobile listing, it will change that grid to be going vertical. So you'll have a particular date, and then you'll be looking at one day, and each of the time slots will be hidden. So you'll see each day going vertically, January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, and then you can expand those to show all the time slots on January 1st, then all the time slots on January 2nd, and so forth. Makes for a very long scrolling page, but some people would like to have that defaulted to not only showing each day, but showing each day and each time slot as soon as the page opens up, vertically down the page. So you can expand them by default. That's all that's doing. Require contact information. Like I said, there is a name, phone, and email field for the contact of this reservation on the form when they submit it to make the reservation. This requires they put something in there. If you don't want to require that, you can leave this blank. Allow non-admin members to see who made a reservation. If you just want to basically have the box marked off on the reservation calendar as this, there's a reservation here. You can check this box, and that's all they'll know. Other people coming in to make reservations will see that box is reserved for this amenity, that particular date and time, but it won't show them who made it or any other contact information. So this also is basically taking the name away as well on the reservation display. Allow reservations to offer RSVPs. When a person makes a reservation, we talked about this before, you can actually set up a reservation that you're kind of pre-reserving the amenity, but you also want to allow other people to come to the event at that amenity. So this would be different than saying, let's let people reserve the conference room. And that just might be, somebody reserves it. You already know who's going to be there. You've invited certain people to come to this meeting, but you need to reserve the room. That's kind of the more standard type of reservation. This type of reservation where we have RSVPs is more like an event, and you don't know who's going to come, but you want to allow people to RSVP so you know who will come. So this just says allow that. You can basically disallow that across all reservations if you want and say, we're not going to use RSVPs. Reservations are only for allowing people to say, I want this particular amenity, this room or this place for a particular time slot on a particular date. And finally, allow non-admin members to enable RSVPs on reservations. This simply says, when I go in to make a reservation as a normal user, I'm not an administrator, I may or may not be able to enable the option for RSVPs to be submitted. So again, if you are allowing there to be reservations for events where people need to RSVP, then you can decide whether you want the regular users to turn on RSVPs for that reservation, or you can say, for those type of events, the administrator will handle whether RSVPs are available. I don't want RSVPs to be available for every type of reservation. I want administrators to make that decision. Again, this is a very non-standard use, so you're probably not going to have to worry about that, but the option is available to take away the checkbox from the form, which you'll see in a moment, to allow non-administrator members to turn on RSVPs. Okay, so let's go ahead and save these. Let's look at what the reservations calendar looks like. This is actually the admin page for reservations. So if you go into admin and then reservations, this is what you'll get. It's a listing of all the reservations on the system for this particular amenity, which is the only one we have right now, is the clubhouse. And this shows current or all. So if we have reservations that have passed, like I said before, you can have a reservation that, let's say, spans 3 months. At some point, that end date, that last event, that last occurrence of that event has passed. At that point, it's no longer considered current. So you can click to current and it will filter this list and only show the ones that are still ongoing or upcoming. The other options up here are fairly standard. New this is the button you would use as an administrator to create a new reservation. But I'm gonna show you, it's the same form you're gonna see in a moment, but I'm gonna go back to the reservation calendar so you can see what that looks like. When a regular user comes in, or I should say not necessarily the calendar, but the regular reservations page, this is what the regular user, the non-admin user, sees when they come in to make a reservation. 3 things you can do. The first is, I wanna make a reservation. This is your box right here. Reservation calendar. I'm gonna pick an amenity, clubhouse, and I can view the calendar to see which slots are available. If I want, I could theoretically just click on add reservation and go right to the form and start making my reservation. What's going to happen is if I pick a date that's at a time that is reserved already, it's going to kick it back when I go to save it. So it's probably a little more efficient to go in and view the calendar and pick a date and time you know are accessible. So if I click view, here's that larger calendar that we were talking about that's different from your system calendar, your website community calendar. This shows we are looking at the clubhouse calendar. Here's our date and year. And you can scroll through the different months going back and forth, February and April, or you can pick a month right from here. You can pick a different year, so forth and so on. We know that this amenity, the clubhouse, is off limits until 8 a.m. So you can see all these boxes are red because they're not available. We can see here, these are gray because these dates have already passed. And it's not until we get to 5 o'clock on Friday the 17th, or Friday the 16th, excuse me, which is today's date and time, that we can make an amenity, that we can make a reservation for this amenity. So I'm going to go ahead and choose tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and you can see when you hover over it, it will show you it's available on 3/17 at 3 p.m. I can click on that, and this is the form they'll see when they go to make the reservation. Now, a regular member who's not administrator will not have this active box. That's for you as the administrator to come in when you need to approve a submitted reservation. If you have that approval process turned on where it's required, this is what you'll check. You'll come in and check this box because it won't be checked yet. If it's pending because a regular user submitted it, you'll come back here, you'll view the reservation, you'll say, yes, this all looks good, I approve. You'll check the active box and save it. So, but for the non-admin user, they're going to fill in a title. We can just call it meeting. And I'm not going to fill any contact information in right now, but they could put in their name, their phone, their email, and that's who the administrator could contact if they needed to ask questions about this particular reservation. And again, the reason this doesn't default to profile information is in a lot of cases, reservations are made. Well, I should say, it is going to associate your profile with this reservation. So the administrator is going to know who reserved it because it's got your profile information and it's going to keep this reserved by here. And that will be available to the administrator. So they'll know who actually submitted the reservation. That's not a problem. But sometimes the contact person for this particular reservation is a different person because it might be some type of event that they're not, I'm just filling it in for them. I'm just submitting it for them. Or I might be the administrator making the reservation for them because they're unfamiliar with the app. And so they're just asking you to do it. And you say, yes, I'll go ahead and make that reservation for you. But you put their name and other information in here. So people who come in and see the reservation will know who to contact if they have questions about it. Let's see. So the start date and end date is what we talked about before. You may have turned off the end date if you've told the system to not allow repeating reservations. In that case, the end date would go away and these repeat fields would go away. If you've used the calendar before, the regular system calendar, then you've seen these before. I wanted to repeat weekly on Monday, and that's how you'd set it up, just like in the regular calendar. There are a few less options here. I think the regular calendar has the option of choosing specific months. This one's a little less flexible in that regard, but for most things you can do the biweekly, monthly, annually, or the second Monday of every month within these dates, from between the starting and ending date. So it does have most of the common calendar repeat event type of configurations. Your start time and end time, this is defaulted to the slot you picked. And it defaults to a half an hour. So I picked the 3 o'clock reservation. By the way, I'm going to go back and change this to no repeat because I just want to make this a simple example. So we're going to say today at 3 I'm reserved, or on actually this was on the 17th. I'm reserving it at 3 p.m., but I want to reserve it for a full hour. So I'm going to reserve it from 3 to 4. Okay, and then I'm going to put in a meeting from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Your users will put in a much more meaningful description of their event. These options down here are, some of them will appear, some of them may not, depending on whether you are an administrator or not, or which options have been turned on in the reservations or in the amenities setup. So let's go over some of them. Hide reservation information for non-admin members. This will allow you to hide the reservation, the reserved by, the information typed in here, the contact information. It's going to hide all that from anyone who's not an administrator. So if you're reserving the amenity, but you don't want anybody else to see the information about it, only the administrators, you could check that box. Accept regardless of conflicts. This was the one we talked about before, which this box may not be here depending on the administrative settings that the administrator has set up. This means if I submit this and 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock are not available, it would allow me to reserve other dates in the repeating dates that were available. I'm not repeating anything here, but if I had said every Monday for the next 6 months, it would pick each Monday that was available, and it would go ahead and reserve it, and it would just skip the ones that weren't. So it's kind of a way of saying, go ahead and save the reservation, get me what you can, but go ahead and skip. Don't just stop if any of those dates is unavailable, which is what it will do by default. By default, if any of the dates you requested are not available, then it will kick it back and say no reservation has been made at all. Allow reservation to include restricted amenities, dates, and times. There was that box where we could put in restricted dates and times, both individual dates, like I think I'd put in Christmas for all years, and then there was also that grid of time slots on each day of the week. This is basically a bypass that allows you to go ahead and include any dates or times that are in those restricted dates and times. Now, normally for the day of the week time slots, they wouldn't be available on that calendar that we just saw. They'd be, grayed out, so you couldn't choose them. But theoretically, you could come in and put in one of those dates here. And you could also select one of those times from this time slot. So it is possible for somebody to override the dates and times they chose and choose an invalid one. Checking this box would allow you to override that. Create calendar event in the meetings category. We talked about this before. This allows the user to say, when you create this reservation in the reservation calendar, also put an entry for this in the regular community calendar. And then they can choose which category of the community calendar they want it to be in. Allow members to RSVP. Again, this may not be here, this checkbox, if the administrators turned it off, but this allows the submitter to say, I'm going to create an event. I'm going to reserve the meeting room. I'm not sure who's going to be at the meeting, but I want to know who's going to show up at the meeting so I can provide enough coffee. So you're going to allow people to RSVP, and they must RSVP in order to come. Then you would go ahead and check this box. It turns on the RSVP system, and people can RSVP to this reservation. Allow non-admin members to view attendees. The attendee list for any RSVP'd reservation, this applies to RSVPs, is only visible to the administrators. However, you can allow non-admin members to see that list. So people going in to say, I'm about to RSVP, I wonder if that other person is going, or how many people are going to this meeting. They could then see that. By default, they wouldn't. Okay, so that is making a reservation. I'm gonna go ahead and save this one. And there you can see it shows up in the list. Some basic information about it, the date, time. It's not repeating, it's active. Because I'm the administrator, I already made it active. Otherwise, it would say no if it was submitted by a non-admin user. And so now I want to go back to the reservation system, and I'm going to view the calendar again. And when I scroll down, you can see from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, there's a meeting from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. It has filled in the times that I selected. And if I click on it, I can see, this is what you would see if you were not the person who owns it. That's the edit page you could go into. But this is just what everyone else will see. They just want to see the information about the reservation. Again, there were options to hide this contact information, hide who it was reserved by. There were different options in there. So some of this information may or may not appear. And then if we go back to here, I can view, also this other box allows me to view my reservations. So I can click on view for all amenities. This will give me a list of my reservations. And I could also just choose by amenity. If I have a reservation number, which is normally issued to you through your email, you can plug it in just to find it and go directly to it. And then RSVPs, this would allow you to see any RSVPs and any reservations that you've RSVP'd to for a specific amenity. So you can choose your amenity and say, did I RSVP to any events at the clubhouse or any meetings or anything at the clubhouse? And this will show you the list of that. Currently, there are no RSVPs because I have not set them up and made them. So that is the basics of setting up your reservation system. And just to summarize, you would need to go into your amenities first and enable each amenity that you want to use reservations for by checking the box in that amenity that says allow reservations. And let me go back into one more thing here and just show you. When you enable reservations, when you go into here and you say allow reservations to be made for this amenity and you check that box, what it does is it turns on this reserve button. This reserve button is normally not here. So now if I'm viewing the amenities and I say, oh, here's the clubhouse, I want to reserve it. This is another way to get to the reservations app. Instead of going through the menus and saying reserve and then going into there and choosing the clubhouse, somebody might find it more intuitive to come into the amenities and say, oh yeah, I want to reserve the clubhouse. Let me go here. And it comes right into the reservations grid with the time slots for the clubhouse. And you'll be able to go ahead and choose your date and time. So that is how you use the reservation system, by setting up your amenities. And you can add the restrictions you need in there and the parameters by which it can be reserved. And then there's also the setup on the reservation side, which is more global. That's some restrictions and settings that affect all reservations. And that's where people will go to make their reservations. So I hope you found this tutorial on the reservation system helpful, and thank you very much for watching.